All right, and welcome to this Tuesday edition of DB2. It's the long one, folks. David Brem here with Daniel Butler's always. Butler, how's it treating you?
Oh, it's treating me well. Thank you, all of you who have clicked on this video. We are going to go through all the games, all 14 games this week, I think, right?
Man, I
Four
thought I
teams
was
on
going to get
by.
you on this. Yeah.
Four teams on by, 28 teams playing. The Jets, Falcons, Saints, and 49ers all on bye this week. So if you have any of those players that you've been putting in your lineup, make sure to find uh, suitable replacements. Hopefully you have those. We're going to go through, again, every single game. We'll talk about players that we find to be interesting. But going through all these games, we're going to probably go through them decently quick. So this video is not like 3 hours long. But I guess we'll find out how long it is because I don't know because we're at the beginning. So I'm not sure but we'll find out. But one thing I do want to lead off with, even though I said we don't, I want to, we got to make sure we get through this. I'm just going to go quickly through. I don't know how you feel about this. I want to go through the top 10 to 12 players at every position. Just I always think that is interesting when we talk about them because we're going to talk about wow they were fifth for this week or whatever. So you kind of an idea. Justin Herbert scored over 42 points this week, which is absolutely insane. Lamar Jackson, all right there as well. So those guys were clearly 1-2. Tom Brady had a heck of a week. Josh Allen. And then there's a big drop off. So those four were incredible. Jameis Winston, Davis Mills, let's go. Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Carson Wentz, Trevor Lawrence, Matt Ryan, and Dak Prescott, all scoring over 20 points. Anything to say about that right there? All those 12 quarterbacks, besides how amazing Davis Mills is. Unfortunately, they
Yeah,
lost.
you took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, yeah, big weeks for a few quarterbacks. Obviously, still super impressed with what Brady's doing. Herbert had a great day. I mean, there's not a ton of names in there that surprise you other than Mills.
And yeah, and also how big of performances some of those were with like four quarterbacks over
Oh yeah.
36 points, which is insane. At running back, we had 15 running backs over 20 points. That also seems pretty impressive. Eckler with almost 33 was running back one. Jonathan Taylor and Miles Gaskin tied for two with 31.9. Henry was still, he was running back four, but he's not too far off, 31. Kamara, Madison taking over for Cook. Kareem Hunt at 7. Elliott at 8. Nick Chubb at 9. DeAndre Swift, Najee Harris, James Robinson, Antonio Gibson, Leonard Fournette, and Devontae Booker taking over for Saquon Barkley, rounding out the top 15. All 15 of those backs had more than 20 points. So I think if you played any of those, you're probably pretty happy with that performance. That seems like a really good week for
Yeah, a
running
lot of
backs.
lot of lot of good days. Nice to see Miles Gaskin up there, a little higher than he's kind of been performing, which we'll get to, but that was good to see.
And then at wide receiver, there were 16 players that had over 20 points. Devontae Adams, insane. Mike Williams, insane. Hollywood Brown, insane. Antonio Brown, insane. And then we have Kadarius Toney. Obviously, he had an amazing game. Mike Evans, Jamar Chase. There we go. I'm sure we'll talk about him. Robert Woods, DK Metcalf. Woods with no touchdowns as well, which is really impressive. Same with Toney. Metcalf, Cortland Sutton at 10. Nice to see him back. Callaway at 11. Good game by him. Claypool, Chris Moore from the Houston Texans. Michael Pittman, DeAndre Hopkins, former Texan. And Emmanuel Sanders, another guy we've talked about rounding out. That was 16. Justin Jefferson just missing out with 19.4. Any real surprises you want to talk about there? Obviously, some guys we haven't talked about like at all. So there was definitely those. But Devontae Adams
Yeah,
continues to I mean, I know he hasn't been the number one guy, but I mean, he's pretty good.
yeah, he's decent at football. So yeah, a lot of names you expect. Couple games we've talked about. Love seeing Jamar Chase continue.
And we'll talk
Like
more
my
about these
one real
guys when
big
we get to
take.
the games, of course, because these were the best performers. Tight end Mark Andrews scored almost 42 points from a tight end. That's a save. Insane. David Njoku at 2. Kyle Pitts, nice to see him up there.
Yeah,
20,
finally.
27 points would be number one tight end most weeks. It just happened that David Njoku just barely edged him out, and then Mark Andrews, obviously. Dawson Knox at 4, your favorite
I don't want
tight
to talk
end.
about that one.
Hunter Henry at 5, Travis Kelsey at 6, and there's a big drop off down to Dalton Schultz, Parham, Hayden Hurst, Dan Arnold, rounding out the top 10. So, again, there's a huge difference. Number 10, Arnold had 10.4 points. Dawson Knox had double that at 4, 20. Kyle
Why?
Pitts had two and a
We're
half
not
times
talking
that.
about that?
So, I'm just saying
Knox is my
there's a
new mortal
big
enemy.
difference between those tight ends. Darren Waller, if you're interested, is down there at tight end 15. But we'll talk about all that in this video. And I know I kind of surprised you with that, but I just always find that to be interesting, even though we have to talk about all 14 games in one video. And I'm trying to fit all this in. Maybe not the best idea, but don't forget, I probably should have said this. Hit the like button. If you made it this far, it's been a few minutes, but we do appreciate that. Subscribe as well. All right, so leading things off, the Bucks versus the Eagles. Looking at the Bucks side, we have Tom Brady, quarterback. Well, I don't think he was quarterback 3. Most weeks he would be quarterback 1. He was in quarterback 2. No, actually 3 because it hadn't updated. Lamar Jackson actually went above him. But yeah, so he was obviously continues to be amazing. Currently quarterback 1 on the season. Yeah. That is so surprising. Even if you drafted Brady, he was drafted at quarterback 9. So it's incredible to see that. But the big story for me is even more than Brady, but it probably makes sense, is they have 3 wide receivers that are top 15 on a points per game basis, which is just insane. Couldn't you keep that up? No. Probably not. But, I mean, obviously, if you drafted any of these guys, Godwin, Evans have actually been pretty close to ADP, but the big story, of course, is Antonio Brown.
Yeah, huge.
Currently, wide receiver 12.
I think they will keep it up. Like it doesn't seem like every week I'm like, oh, and somebody's had a bad week almost every week. But at the same time, like I don't see a situation where you can bench any of these guys. Like Godwin, it looks good. He didn't like comparatively. If you just saw it in a vacuum, like you're okay with the day he had in week 5. But then the problem is his teammates were 3 and 5 or somewhere in that range. We filled out this before the Monday night stats, so probably 4 and 6 if I had to guess. And it's crazy. Antonio Brown that's by far the most second most surprising. I think Gronk he's hurt, but when he's on the field, being right back to like the best tight end, one of the best tight ends in football was a little surprising. I think people, including myself, saw him more in the like 7-8 range, and it looks like he's right back in there in the thick of things.
Yeah, he was drafted at tight end 14, and yeah, Gronk, that does worry me a little bit. If not worry, because if you had Antonio Brown, you're ecstatic about how he's playing when he's been on the field. 3 out of the 4 weeks when he's been on the field, he's been well over his ADP. This week being his best game. With those 2 touchdowns. Not worried about Godwin. He had 11 targets. He just didn't get a touchdown. That's the difference between being, a top 15 guy a lot of times or borderline top 30. He just didn't get a touchdown.
It's tough when the other 2 wide receivers get 2 each.
Yeah, so Brady threw for 5 touchdowns. You run out. If Brady throws for 5 touchdowns and 400 yards every game, these wide receivers, they're going to be, all 3 of them are insane. We'll wait and see with Gronk. I do think that we'll see how that works out. Can they sustain a tight end plus 3 wide receivers? That could be pretty tough. But with that said, there's a good chance you're playing them anyway. Like they may not have. Somebody's probably not going to have a great week every week. There's always going to be one guy kind of left out. But you still got to play them because the upside of this offense with Brady being the best quarterback in fantasy right now, I think you got to play. You got to play them all.
Gio vulturing and another receiving touchdown, just taking all that value away.
But Fournette still has been
Fournette's still a
pleasant
guy,
surprise.
But yeah, in the passing game, it's just you hate to see that. You hate to see guys who you just aren't used in fantasy take a touchdown. You're like, that could have went to somebody that mattered to us. But yeah, Fournette is obviously the guy we've talked about that a ton. And he's currently number 20, and that's probably where he kind of belongs. But he's had a couple of top 15 weeks in a row too. So nice solid start. You feel pretty good about him.
Yeah, and we won't talk as much about other teams probably as this team. Obviously, this is just such a fantasy relevant team. Like the running back is relevant. All the receivers are relevant. The tight end, when Gronk comes back, Cameron Bray, OJ Howard, not really relevant, but when Gronk comes back, they'll be relevant. The backup quarterback, Blaine Gabbert, he's not relevant, but he did have a nice, QBR of 93. He actually had a better QBR than Tom Brady. Is it time to sit Tom Brady for Blaine Gabbert?
All right, on the other side of the ball is the Eagles. That's my new thing. I'm just going to start talking about the next thing when you go off on a weird tangent. So, other side, we got the Eagles. Hurts continues to just, I don't want to say dominate, but be a solid top 10 with the upside of a top 5 quarterback. Like, the rushing just makes such a difference. He ran for 2 touchdowns. Like,
Yeah, that's
Nothing else you can ask for him. Like,
yeah, he's been incredible his whole career. As I know it's not been very long, but basically every start you get a top 10 quarterback. I think we both think it was outside the top 10. He was drafted at
oh yeah,
quarterback 12. I was like, okay, like that's probably
he was
okay,
drafted at
but
12, and I was probably below. I was probably
yeah,
low
but
on
the
him.
rushing obviously saves him. He did not have a good day. A 22 of 37, 200 yards, no passing touchdowns, at a pick as well. It was not a good fantasy day. If you look at the at the Philadelphia passing numbers, you're like, wow, that's tough. And then you see, wait, he was quarterback 7, maybe 8 with Lamar now, but still a top 10 performance because of that rushing. So Jalen Hurts is been incredible. Unfortunately, I don't really see much else on this offense besides him because his value is a lot of his rushing.
Yeah.
Devonta Smith had 7 for 77. That's pretty solid on the 8 targets. Really, really pretty solid. But he's still been, I wouldn't say a disappointment, but around what you drafted him. The last couple weeks have been
Yeah.
nice.
He's still a guy you're
Uh,
thinking about probably in your
yeah, should
flex, but
obviously is owned, and you could definitely consider him for a flex spot. Uh, I guess
I
the
want a
tight
running
end.
back on this team to be so good so bad, and there's nobody's worth risking right now. Like if you're in a spot, maybe Sanders, but
I mean, yeah, I
it's not
mean,
good.
he did get a majority of the snaps, which you like that. I think there's a chance that you still are rolling him out there, depending on how you draft. I mean, you drafted him at running back 20, with him seeing so much snaps. He got 11 carries, just no touchdowns, and finished as running back 33. It was nice if you're a Sanders owner to see him on the field so much more than Kenneth Gainwell.
Yeah.
Even though we thought Gainwell might be starting to inch in, it looks like hold up. Might have to wait a little bit longer if that's going to happen. So I guess there's a little bit of optimism if you're a Miles Sanders owner, but you probably still would ideally like to have a different option besides him. But you
Yeah.
might not because of where you drafted him.
Yeah. And then we have just the continuation of just solid matchups the NFL keeps sending to London. Just really doing a disservice to an entire country. We got Dolphins, Jags. See, Dolphins gonna be one of those teams we can get through pretty quick. Great to see Miles Gaskin. I said this in the up top. Great to see him step up and have an awesome week. I don't think he's this, but I think he's higher than he's been. So it'll be super interesting to see how this continues and what he looks like. But I think he's in that 15 to 20 range. He was drafted at 21. I think he may be a little bit higher than that. He's probably not the 2 every week, but he's definitely not the 72 he was in week 4. So good to see him have a nice day. And I think still a guy who you're penciling in almost every league.
Yeah, it was kind of. I said last week that it was somebody that I think would be on my bench, and that's what's so frustrating is he had this crazy game, and a lot of people probably put him on his bench because he hardly saw
Oh
the
yeah.
field in week 4. It's like, how do you put somebody in your lineup after? I mean, he hasn't been great. He doesn't play at all basically in week 4, very little. Had 12 snaps, and then this happens. I will say this: it is disappointing if you did bench him. Hopefully you didn't, but if you did, it's nice to know. Okay, there's he probably is gonna stay. He's not going
It
anywhere.
also was almost all receiving.
Yeah.
Like
So
he did not rush well.
yeah. I mean, he only ran 5 times, so it could
Yeah.
be just really the way the matchup worked out.
Yeah.
The
Not
game flow.
I don't think any NFL team is super ecstatic about 9 rushes in an entire football game. That's not
Yeah,
really
and he'll have more rushes. Obviously, it's just nice to see him on the field for 70% of the snaps. So good to see it. That's the most snaps he's had of a percentage wise all season. So
Mhm.
nice to see that. Looks like if he was in the doghouse or whatever happened, maybe there was an injury that we just didn't really know about. It seems like he's back. So Miles Gaskin, not really much else to talk about. But if you
No.
but Miles Gaskin is right back. You drafted him at running back 21 ish. I think
And
he's
especially
back.
with bye weeks, he's going to be a guy
Yeah,
that's almost almost started everywhere.
yeah,
On the other side, London's unofficial team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Um, Lawrence had a good day. He's still, I don't think, relevant in any way unless you're in a 2 quarterback or an extraordinarily deep league. But good to see him pull out a top 10 performance. Uh, Robinson, number 11, guy I really like. Ton of talent, has been on a nice tear the last 3 weeks. 3-7-11. You'll take that. Um, take that all day, and then that's really where it stops. with this team. It's Robinson, and that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, Robinson's been incredible. When you drafted him, you're really happy with how he's performing, especially these last 3 weeks. So, yeah, Lawrence has been a big disappointment fantasy wise. Not even, I mean, he's been a, I mean, not even a great QB2, and you kind of thought he might be your QB1 if you drafted it at one of the last teams to take a quarterback. So, he hasn't been great. Nothing really wide receiver wise that makes you excited. We see a Tavon Austin sighting, 5 for 54, which was interesting, but. Yeah, Marvin Jones had 5 targets, only had 1 catch for 25 yards. I mean, there's just not much. But Dan Arnold, the new addition tight end, 6 for 64, and this wasn't at all on the radar because obviously he was on the Panthers. But Dan Arnold getting tight end 9 this week on those 8 targets. I kind of think he's kind of interesting. A rookie quarterback, if he's liking this tight end, I know it's a new tight end. I'm always worried when players change teams, but how long it will take them to be, get acclimated to the offense. It's kind of like a speculation to me on this could be like an interesting like bottom 12, somewhere top 12, top 15 tight end.
Yeah, if you've got one of the big guys when their bye week hits and you just need to grab somebody off the waiver wire, depending on the matchup, I could see it. For sure. And honestly, he's a tight end who's probably like every other tight end who's not a stud. If he gets in the end zone, he'll probably have a decent day for you. And that's just kind of how it goes.
And if the Jags are down a lot when they're terrible, if they're throwing a lot, then he could be a recipient of some nice garbage time yards and touchdowns.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, nice rivalry game. Packers-Bears. Aaron Rodgers made his way up to 12 this week. Just obviously continues to kind of have. I mean, week 2 he was kind of where you drafted him, but other than that, he's been. It's so weird for a guy he's 15 overall, but when it's Aaron Rodgers, that is definitely not. It just continues to not be Aaron Rodgers. You know what I mean? I don't know another way to say it. Like he's just doesn't look like Aaron Rodgers this season.
Yeah, I mean, again, they won the game against a solid Bengals team. They could have easily lost. They could have easily won it a lot sooner. That was the most disgusting field goal, kicking that you will ever see. Just watch how many field goal misses there was in that game. It was insane. But yeah, either team could have won that way before the final kick by Crosby going in. But yeah, this is interesting. We've talked about Aaron Rodgers, how well, maybe not much about Aaron Rodgers on how low we are on him, but to me, if you're redrafting, he's not a top 10 quarterback. I don't think it's close, maybe, but he was quarterback 11. It's not like he had a bad week. He was actually pretty solid, but the offense is just I don't think it's that good. And if it isn't bad, but Aaron Jones, I feel like is such a pivotal part of the offense that he's going to get this week. He didn't have a touchdown, but AJ Dillon got a receiving touchdown. But AJ Dillon did see 33% of the snaps, which is and he's been up there getting 30 to 40%, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, Aaron Jones is a stud. He only got 14 carries this game. AJ Dillon, kind of interesting with those 4 catches.
Interesting. I just don't think you'll feel confident right now.
Yeah, he's probably an ad if you're an Aaron Jones owner. I know we've talked about handcuffs a little bit, but probably could pick if you have a spot for him. And if you're in a deeper league, he has to be owned. But outside of that, I don't think you're not gonna be able to start him because he is a second running back. But still, kind of interesting. He hasn't been fantasy relevant at all until this week.
Yeah, and Devontae Adams is insane. Like
he is
even with Rodgers not playing up to what we're expecting, Devontae Adams continues just to be a stud out there. So, there's not a whole lot to say about him. Robert Tonyan, I think I was obviously very high on him preseason. It's not working. I have officially dropped him in at least 2 of my leagues. So, unfortunately, he just doesn't appear to be involved. So, unless he grabs a touchdown, he's just getting nothing.
Yep.
So, on the other side of the ball, with the Bears, Fields left for a short amount of time. It looks like that's not going to be anything lingering. He's good to go, but did not look this offense they're just not putting him in a position to succeed. Like That's all there is to it.
Yeah, it's been a tough road here with Nagy and this offense. He did go down for a play and then came back. I think it was just one play. But yeah, Fields not great. Has not been great. You thought that he could be really relevant because of his rushing. You haven't seen it. So right now, if you think about the rookie quarterbacks, Fields, Lawrence, Trey Lance. I won't include Mac Jones and Wilson because I don't think they're relevant at all. But if you look at those three and where they were drafted, I think it's clearly Justin Fields is the third guy there. And I think there's a good case to be made that you don't even need to roster him anymore. If one of those other guys are available or somebody else, especially when bye weeks come around, I'm kind of like, I'm not sure it's happening. If it is, it might be a few weeks still. There's probably a better option out there, or at least, I mean, during bye weeks, you probably don't want to drop your main guy. This is maybe just a second quarterback. So yeah, I like Justin Fields, but I just don't think it's working. So right now with outside of that, unfortunately because of that, Allen Robinson is been one of the biggest disappointments. Drafted at wide receiver 11, is currently wide
and a
receiver
guy
69.
I was super high on. Just
Yeah, it's tough. It may be even lower than that, but yeah, somewhere around 70. So yeah, it's just a wasteland there. Mooney, again, he's I guess close to where you drafted him, but a lot of people thought he could be a nice, kind of like Antonio Brown, be like, oh yeah, but he has not been that at all. So it's been a tough day, tough year for Chicago.
well, and even
passing game.
even the running backs where you thought, okay, I at least kind of know what's going on here. You don't even know that anymore. Like Williams looked like he was going to be the guy. He did score a touchdown, and technically the best day. But Herbert was very involved in this game. Actually, had more carries. Like they've even made the running back situation one where I don't know that you can confidently put anybody from the Bears in your lineup.
Yeah, I mean, if you're telling me that either one of those guys are going to get 15 carries, there's a good chance they do. But we just don't know. I mean, are you expecting to get 34 carries, a game from the two running backs? Probably not.
Yeah.
So I will say I'm really happy. If you pick up Herbert, I think he's interesting. But obviously, as a Damian Williams owner, if you have him, like you're like, I don't really know what's going on because I was expecting a 60-40 or a 70-30, and I get a 50-50. So he did get a touchdown. So if you were starting him, which I think a lot of people were, I still think there's a chance you may be starting him this week. You just gotta maybe tamper expectations a little bit because we thought it was going to be more of a he would be involved a little bit more, just on the field more. Still a solid day though because he did get a touchdown, had a couple catches. So I do think they're interesting until Montgomery comes back, and he's still the guy you would rather own over Herbert. But Herbert, we've talked about.
You're trying to find better options for sure though.
Yeah.
Next game, Bengals Lions. Burrow had a kind of what's become more of a Burrow day, kind of in that 10-15. Not a guy you're ecstatic about starting in anything but like a deep league or 2-quarterback league, but solid enough to give the value to the guys around him who are the guys we really care about fantasy wise. Chase had another great game. Higgins, not a fantastic game, but looked decent, had 5 catches. And Boyd didn't have a good game, but still this offense looks like, especially Chase and Higgins, look like they're going to just be solid starts for you every week. And Boyd with bye weeks on, I could see a lot of leagues where Boyd's going to be started pretty much every week too. This looks like one of the teams that's going to have 3 wide receivers relevant.
Yeah, I mean, Boyd, I guess it depends on what relevant is because Boyd is obviously, I'm not sure. He's on the field. That's always
he's on the field, and like with bye weeks, you don't know what situation you're in. That's my only thing. Like, obviously, you'd rather not. Most weeks, hopefully, you'll have somebody better. But he's also a guy on your bye week. If people are out and you have to start Boyd, it's not the worst thing that's ever.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're getting a wide receiver who's on the field almost every time. You look at the snap count. This is a team, again, we've talked about this a lot, that runs 3 wide receivers almost exclusively. So Jamaar Chase, 91% of the snaps. Tyler Boyd, 82% of snaps. T. Higgins, 70% of snaps. So they're pretty much all 3 on the field at the same time. T. Higgins coming back after a couple missed games.
That'll go
so we're expecting maybe him to be a little bit more higher. Boyd maybe come back a little bit, but yeah, it's those three. Those are the guys you'll see on the field. So all three of them are super interesting. T. Higgins will have better days. Again, this was first day back, 5 for 32. 8.2 points on his first game. I'm not overly upset about that. Burrow continues to be solid. The last 3 weeks has been solid. So I think this offense, we like it. He's been good. P. Ryan is super interesting as a flyer. Mixon obviously is still the guy if he's healthy, but if Mixon keeps if he's banged up or something, P. Ryan showed that if Mixon is out, P. Ryan is should be in there for you if you're able to pick him up.
Yeah, Mixon a little banged up. I think he'll be back to kind of his normal self. But yeah, like you said, if Mixon goes down again or something like that, P. Ryan vaults into basically a must start on this team because he showed, even with Mixon involved a little bit.
I should admit, Mixon was only on the field 28% in this game, so only 19 snaps. So we'll see, if they decide to sit him, if he just doesn't play, obviously that, or if they say he's going to be limited. If you have any indication that Mixon is not going to be 100%, you might be forced or be excited, depending on how you look at things, about starting P. Ryan this upcoming week and in the future if that continues.
Yeah. All right. Other side, Lions. Best quarterback in the league.
My favorite team.
Say before you started. Yeah. Obviously not fantasy relevant at all at quarterback. I don't hate him as much as you do, but there's no world you're starting him. He was number 30 quarterback this week. Actually, that was old, so he's 31 because that was before 31 or 32. So this running back situation continues to be. I mean, Swift continues to look awesome, and Williams is maybe not quite as good as we thought there for a minute, but still a guy who's interesting and a possibility to play, depending on your situation.
Yeah, I mean, I still actually, even though Williams, his snap count he only got 32%, only was on the field 22 times. Swift, if you ever see him banged up at all, this is, you just have to watch out. If you're a Jamal Williams owner, he should be owned, obviously. I mean, there's no chance he's not, but if you're a Jamal Williams owner and you see Swift is banged up, which I know a lot, earlier in the season, you see that maybe, he might be limited. I think there's a shot you could play him. I know he hasn't been great the last couple weeks, but he had that really good week 1. Week 3 was solid as well. He was on the field 50% of the time in week 3. So again, just watch out for, what's going on with Swift. You kind of are more passive with Williams because it's all dependent on Swift. Swift is a top 10, top 12 guy. He's been incredible. You drafted him at running back 19, and because he's so involved in the passing game, because Jared Goff doesn't know how to throw downfield, he's been really good. And then I do want to mention just St. Brown had 8 targets in this game, and back-to-back weeks, top 30. So there is something there, maybe. Hawkinson...
Not his week.
Yeah, but that's 3 straight weeks. I am nervous. I still think you got to roll him out there. He only had 3 targets, though, because of the first couple weeks. But you can't do much about it, I don't think. But it is definitely you just got to...
I mean, if the trend continues, you start to look at your options. But right now, I don't know how you...
Yeah, it's just so tough because there's just nobody that has the upside of TJ Hawkinson that you're going to be that's going to be available. But just something to monitor. 3 straight weeks of poor production. This week only 3 targets too, which even makes me more nervous. But again, I think Jared Goff will throw to his running backs, will throw to his tight end. So I think he still is going to be a top 5, top 7 guy. It's just not the top 2 or 3 after the first 2 weeks that we thought maybe he could be.
Yeah. You want to take this very fantasy relevant team?
Okay. Well, they haven't been fantasy relevant, but this week they actually had quite a nice week. The Houston Texans, which doesn't mean anything because you wouldn't have started any of them, but the Houston Texans could have definitely won that game. They were 8.5-point underdogs. I think that's the last I saw, and they definitely could have won this game. And I'm like, they have a shot if they win. If they can just keep just a little bit until Tyrod comes back, maybe. Though I will say, Davis Mills looked competent this game, which was nice to see.
That's what you want to hear. Your quarterback is competent.
Doesn't mean much because you're not going to play Davis Mills, even though he was quarterback 5. But and I know Brandon Cooks did not have a good game. So you're like, wow, he threw for 300 yards. Brandon Cooks had 3 for 23. But if Davis Mills continues to be competent at quarterback, I think you're going to feel a lot better about Brandon Cooks until Terod comes back, unless they decide it's a lost season and just ride with Davis Mills the rest of the season, which they might do. But especially if he plays like he did in this game. Chris Moore, 5 for 109 and a touchdown. I'm not really buying any of this. Chris Conley, 3 for 84 and a touchdown. Again, 5 targets, 4 targets respectively. David Johnson, I was actually I was looking at the waiver wire to see like what are columns, like see what people are talking about, and a lot of people are saying like Mark Ingram is again interesting maybe if he's available. I don't know what game David Johnson being that involved with the offense. I think David Johnson is the guy. I know he only had 2 carries, but when he's on the field, he's so involved in the passing game. I think he's like a very deep league, but he could be interesting as he was on the field he was the majority guy. Mark Ingram and him were basically in a timeshare with Philip Lindsay clearly the number 3 guy. So David Johnson get 5 more snaps than Mark Ingram, but that's just something to think about if you're really desperate for in a deep league. Outside of that, you're not starting any of the running backs. But I do want to, the wide receivers are not relevant. I don't think, besides Cooks, even though Cooks was the worst of them all, basically, outside of him, not relevant.
I will say the last 2 weeks have been a downward trend from where he started. So you start to wonder, but as of right now, I think he's still a guy you got to throw out there.
Yeah.
Other side, Colts, another team where there's a couple fantasy relevant, but for the most part, not a whole lot going on there. Wentz, you're not touching. Taylor's a stud. Pittman's really the only guy to talk about as far as the Colts go. He's now strung together a couple of top 10 weeks. Sorry, I was way in the wrong thing. A top 15. He's got a couple of those games, but he's one of those guys that like I feel like I don't really think about starting. I have him on a couple teams, but then when I see his point totals, there are times when he's outperformed guys that I have started without even thinking about. So maybe he's a guy I need to start thinking about more, at least, to put him in my lineup.
Yeah, I actually was thinking the same thing. My wife and I have him, and this might be somebody, especially when bye weeks come around. He's been sitting on the bench the whole year, but when you see he's on the field every snap, basically. He's on the field 61 snaps of the 69. He only missed 8 snaps. He had 7 targets, 6 for 89. Carson Wentz threw for 400 yards. Obviously, you're not expecting that every game, but Wentz continues to me to look pretty solid. Again, I know they lost this game, but he played really well, which if Carson Wentz is playing well, there's going to be probably a receiver that's relevant, and it's clearly going to be Michael Pittman. That is going to be the one. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So, Michael Pittman is the guy. I'm really high on Michael Pittman rest of season. I believe he is he's currently wide receiver 27, drafted at wide receiver 43. When I say really high, I believe he has the potential to be a top 20 receiver. So I think probably top 22, top 23. He's somewhere in that range where he's close to top 20 rest of season. I really like him. Jonathan Taylor's great. Obviously, he had that 76-yard touchdown, which helped him to be one of the best fantasy weeks. But yeah, I mean, Pittman was good this week. 89 yards. I mean, Wentz did throw for 400, so 89. You maybe thought maybe he could get a little bit more than that, but outside of that, I mean, I'm high on Pittman. I think this is somebody that you probably good chance if you have him on your team when buys hit, you're now like, okay, I'm putting in my lineup and feeling good about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Molly Cox is a guy who, with bye weeks, if you're tight end, if you got one of the studs, could be a streaming option some weeks. Just a name maybe you're not thinking about if you got to throw a tight end in there.
Yeah, he's more involved. He's not really on the field that much, but when he is, he's more involved than
he seems very
Jack Doyle. So
yeah, for sure. Rams, Stafford, couple of 15, 16 weeks in a row. Kind of dipped down. That week 3 is really helping his overall rankings still. A guy kind of on that fringes of. I feel like anybody who has him is still starting him, but if you really look at the numbers, he's kind of on the fringe of start, don't start.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on who if you drafted him and somebody else, there's a chance that you would have drafted him and. I wouldn't say there's a chance that you would have drafted Jalen Hurts because he's around that. But if you, whatever reason, drafted 2 quarterbacks somewhat close to each other, I guess that could have happened. But there's a chance
Yeah.
you would have drafted him and say Daniel Jones if he comes back from concussion, or Sam Darnold. You could have picked up, or same thing with Jones. You wouldn't have drafted him. But some of these guys that you might be like, okay, depending on matchup, you might be interested in playing. But with that said, I've been high on Stafford. He threw
Why
for
not?
365 yards. It's not like that he had a bad game. They had 2 rushing touchdowns instead of, they only had 1 passing. So that's, to me, like, this is, if he throws for 365 yards, if he's throwing for 350 plus yards, I mean, being a 15th ranked quarterback will probably never happen again. He's got more than 1 touchdown. So that's the only thing I just say there. Robert Woods, nice to see him.
Yeah.
I did play him this week, and I'm like not feeling great. Nice to see him showing up and quite well. He looked good too. He looked really good. That defense just got shredded. Cooper Kupp had 10 targets. He just didn't get in the end zone. Continues to be. He was down this week at wide receiver 18, but you drafted him as wide receiver 17. Still currently wide receiver 1, as far as I can tell. So, yeah, those guys are both going to be great rest of the season.
Henderson. Yeah. Henderson continues to look good. Not like a lights out day, but a top 20 day, which is above where you got him. And he's been up there all season. He hasn't had. This is actually his, other than the game he didn't play, obviously. This is his lowest week, and he was the 19th rank. So for the guy you drafted, the 24th running back, you're super happy with that.
This
And
was the
Higbee is a solid play.
Yeah, and this was the fewest snaps for Van Jefferson. He definitely took a little bit back this week, so percent wise, still, like, if you have to start Jefferson, I've talked about it. I say I'm high on him. It's not like I'm starting him, but Van Jefferson, if he's clearly wide receiver 3. Deshaun Jackson did have that long catch, but Van Jefferson, if you play in one, if it's in a deeper league, he's the guy. He's the guy who's on the field twice as much as Deshaun Jackson. So. And he has big play potential as well. So definitely the guy I would play if I was in that situation.
Yep. All right. We have the Giants. Obviously, Daniel Jones didn't play the whole game, didn't even play half the game really. Went out with concussion. It appears, I mean, those are kind of always up in the air, but you assume he's going to be playing on Sunday. One of the bigger surprises at quarterback. There's kind of the 2 big guys who've been very surprising at quarterback, and he's one of them. I mean, even with a 32-33 finish in week 5, he's still the 12th on a points per game basis on the season. He's been great.
And that's misleading too, because he only played, like, not that
That's
much
what I
in his
mean. Even
past
with
game. So even with him leaving early, which is what happened here, he's still quarterback 12 on the season because of that rushing. Obviously, to me, like, it's a little. He can't take hits like that as a quarterback, but it's easy for. You're trying to score, you're trying to help your team, but outside of that, again, like, when I watch him play, like, at least from a fantasy perspective, I feel like he's pretty good. So I like Daniel Jones as rest of season. I think he's probably fringe top 10. If you said Daniel Jones or Matthew Stafford, and you're like, I'd rather have Daniel Jones, I'm not going to fight you, okay? There's other reasons I might fight you and probably win, but that's not one of them. So
I don't think you're winning any fights.
but when we look at the
big news here,
the receiver core with Daniel Jones, Tony obviously had that crazy good day. Probably his best day of the season. He didn't have a touchdown, but so because he didn't have a touchdown, he only finished as wide receiver 4 or 5.
Everybody was out.
But yeah, if he would have got a touchdown, he would have been right there at the top with the Adams. But yeah, everybody's out. So I would just say, interesting ad for sure. And if people continue to be injured and out, okay. But when Galladay's back, if he's back, and when the other guys, Sterling Shepard and all these guys, start coming back, you would think he's going to take a step back, and he's not going to have 13 targets a game. If he does, awesome. He's a top 10 wide receiver. But I don't think many people are saying that. The question is he a flex consideration? If all those guys are out, absolutely.
If everybody's out, yes.
And that's what happened in this game. Not saying I thought he was going to go 10 for 189, but if everybody's out, yeah, sure. If you get some of those guys back, he's still interesting ad, though. Interesting. But great talent. Made some really good plays.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, just kind of tamper expectations a little bit.
Yeah, but the big news here is Saquon being out, um, out for at least a handful of weeks. Uh, Booker came in, and I mean, you couldn't have asked for anything else. Like 16 carries, 42 yards. It's not great, but he came in late. Added 3 catches on top of that with a touchdown. I mean, 2 touchdowns, a little low on the yards, but obviously the guy. And we talked about him in our episode yesterday. The clear number one waiver pickup this week.
Yeah, and he did play most of the game because it was early when Barkley went down. But they do have some tough defenses the next couple weeks. So depending on how long Barkley is out, as much as this is clearly the guy and he's a starting running back in the NFL, and they're gonna give he gave him 16 carries. Still think I think Saquon's like a top 10 guy. He's probably like
Well,
a
yeah, he's
flex consideration against the Rams and there's a chance he may have to play him depending on bye weeks. But I don't love this matchup going. I kind of think this could be not a great game. You're hoping he gets into the end zone. Hopefully he gets a decent amount of catches as well. If he can get 3 to 5 catches and get a majority of the work, which I'm expecting him to do, I think there's a good chance. I mean, he's got to be a flex consideration. I just don't think this is the matchup for him. So if Saquon misses a few weeks, I think they get the Chiefs in a few weeks. That would be the matchup where I'm like, okay, this could be really nice. But we'll see how long Saquon's out.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of the Chiefs, nice transition. Look at that.
I always do that. I do that on purpose.
Pro. Just honest disappointment pretty much across the board for the main guys. Kelsey had a decent week. He was fifth or sixth because of Andrews, but Mahomes down there at 12. Obviously not what we expect from him. Still currently the number 2 quarterback, so like it's not like you're worried about him. But Edwards-Helaire went down. Darrell Williams, the other guy that's one of the top pickups this week on the waivers. Hill didn't have a great. And that's the thing. It's like Mahomes didn't have a great day. Hill didn't have a great day. You're not benching either one of them, so it doesn't really matter. And Kelsey did what Kelsey does. Continues to be one of the few tight ends. He did get a touchdown in this game, but continues to be one of the few tight ends who, even without touchdowns, is still valuable no matter what. So, try to pick up Darrell Williams. Do you have any other analysis on the Kansas City Chiefs?
Oh yeah, Darrell Williams got the majority of the work when Edwards-Helaire went down, but Jerick McKinnon had quite a lot of looks as well, way more involved than I thought he would be. It was actually kind of close. He had 10 less snaps than Williams, so he was up there as well. So somebody in a deeper league, I think McKinnon is interesting as their receiving back. So I know he wasn't involved really. Obviously only 1 carry, only 2 catches, but somebody who's on the field could be interesting. Tyreek Hill, outside of that, Kelsey, I don't think any pass catchers, even though Hardman had 12 targets. I mean, if he's not owned, I feel like he's definitely somebody who's interesting. And there's a chance he may not be owned. Good chance he is. I think he was around 40-some%. So Patrick Mahomes, quarterback 14 for the week after Wentz and Lamar Jackson's week. So with Mahomes being quarterback 14 for the week and Davis Mills being quarterback 6, if you were a Patrick Mahomes
next up
owner,
we have Washington. Kind of the main guys in Washington is all you care about. I'm telling you, this is what I'm doing now. We're just pretending it doesn't happen. I mean, Gibson had right where you expect him day there at 12. McLaurin much lower than you expected, not have a good day. But those are really the 2 guys that matter on this offense. Heineke before this has looked pretty good and still looks okay as far as getting the ball to the guys we care about. So, I mean, it's Gibson and McLaurin. Anything else?
Yeah, well, one, they were playing the Saints. Great defense, played well,
Yeah.
so that could be a part of this as well. I still think Heineke is in consideration for a quarterback play especially with bye weeks. I think he's a chance that he's the guy you would roll with going this week. So that's somebody I would at least consider a little bit. Antonio Gibson, obviously. McKissick was on the field for 40% of the snaps, but probably has a lot to do with game flow here. And
He
then
also did nothing with those
yeah,
snaps.
McLaurin had 11 targets, so don't worry about him. He'll be fine. But one thing I do
Yeah.
want to say is this is the revenge game of Seals Jones versus the Chiefs. So I think he's an interesting tight end to play, a streaming option for this week with Logan Thomas out. So Ricky Seals Jones, somebody 8 targets this week, played 99% of the snaps. So if you're looking for a tight end streaming option, I think this is one that should be considered.
I actually am looking for a tight end streaming option, and you've almost convinced me. Like I'm this close to being convinced that that's the way to go this week. So we'll see how how that plays out. Uh, Vikings, another high powered offense. People check. You're probably already doing this. It's probably just me that messes up. Just make sure you are checking all the injury stuff right. But I thought Cook was pretty solid. It seemed like there wasn't really much of a hesitation that he was going to play, and then he didn't. So that cost me a decent amount. Not really a decent amount of points. It's because my backup got like 5, but I did admittedly start a player who did not play this week, so that was fun. Um, but Alexander Madison continues to just look like a stud when Cook's not there. Like,
Yeah, they basically have two Dalvin Cooks. If Dalvin Cook can't
yeah,
go, okay, let's just throw in Alexander Madison. They're giving him, and what I mean by that is they're not taking any looks away. They're like,
no.
okay, he's our workhorse. We'll put another one in and do the same thing. And that's
Playbook doesn't change.
25 carries. I mean, that's insane. Also had 7 catches, had 40 yards there, and a receiving touchdown. A running back 5. I'm happy I picked him up as a handcuff to Dalvin Cook. It's been really nice with that. Now, I will say, as a Dalvin Cook owner, I am definitely a little nervous about how well he is playing because, I mean, at this point, if you're showing that he can, maybe there's a case to be made that maybe he should be a little bit more involved when Dalvin because let's just look at like week 1, he was on the field 9 snaps. Week 2, he only had 13 snaps. So when Cook comes back, is it going to go back to being that small, or are we going to see more of Alexander Madison? I think that we might. With that said, if you
Yeah.
have Dalvin Cook, you're probably still playing him because it's Dalvin
Well,
Cook.
and honestly, it could be a good thing for it to go up a little bit. While on a week to week basis won't be great, it could keep Cook healthy. Like maybe if they didn't ride Cook as hard,
And
it could.
but this was not a great game by the Vikings overall. They
No,
they edged out the Lions, and they could have easily lost that game. Props to them going down kicking that walk off field goal. But Kirk Cousins was not great this
not a
game.
good game.
Justin Jefferson obviously on his 8 targets did well with that. Adam Thielen, I don't think he had like, anything for much of this game. I think that was all
The last drive,
he got both
both
of those
catches were on the
catches.
last drive.
So I don't know what's going on there. Somebody just to look out for. He's still, because he had the first week really has carried him to still being currently wide receiver 21, which is about what you drafted him. But that's really 1 week that's carrying him. So
Yeah,
something to just be a little. It's not like you got to roll him out there because I really like this offense still. I think Kirk Cousins is a very solid quarterback, but just something with especially this week going up against Carolina, which is a pretty good defense. I would not be surprised if we don't see a big day from any of these guys, really.
yeah. So, I mean, you're throwing out whatever running back is playing. Hopefully Cook, and Jefferson and Thielen. You're throwing those out there. I think Cousins has worked his way into a. You probably have a better option right now, but if you have to start him, I'm not too worried about him. I still think he'll end up pretty decent on the season. But yeah, this week probably isn't going to be the resounding success we're all hoping for. Uh, on the Carolina side of Carolina side of the ball, uh, Sam Darnold came back to earth a little bit, had 3 interceptions. Did not look good this week. I'm choosing to believe he's still the guy we've kind of seen all season and looks pretty good. But this week did not do anything for his doubters for sure. Or it didn't do anything to help against his doubters for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game they should have won, honestly, against Philadelphia, and props to Philadelphia for fighting back, getting that win. But this is a game they should have won. Sam Darnold did not have a great day. One of the worst performances, I think, from a quarterback this week. So it just some bad interceptions, just overall not great play. With that said, I still think better days ahead.
Oh yeah.
This may not be that day going against Minnesota, but I still think he's borderline top 10, top 12 guy. He's right in that mix. DJ
No.
Moore, 7 targets. I'm still so high on him. I know this
Yeah,
week was
bad
not
week,
good.
but
Uh,
who cares?
Hubbard did a really nice job, and
If he
right
could have
there.
gotten the end zone, he had had a great day. Like we'd be raving about his day. He
Yeah,
just
but
didn't get a
you love the
touchdown.
workload there.
Yeah.
He had a really more than he had last week. If McCaffrey's down, obviously you're playing Hubbard. He's right
Yeah.
there as a running back too. And McCaffrey comes back and plays. Hubbard's not going to be on the field because McCaffrey's going to play all basically 70 to 80, somewhere between 70 and 90% of snaps. You're not playing Hubbard, and
No.
McCaffrey will go right back in as the number 1, number 2 guy once he's back because McCaffrey is that good. I'm not so just to. I mean, not that you're worried about if McCaffrey's in, you're playing him 100 times, 100 out of 100 times. There's no scenario where he wouldn't play.
I don't care if they came out and told me he was like 30% healthy. I'm still like, okay,
he's
I'm
like
good with
got a
that.
broken leg. They're still rolling him out. Okay, I'll take it. You know what?
I mean, I'm not ecstatic about it, but all right.
Exactly.
Next up, we have the Chargers and a couple of just awesome performances by guys who have continued to have awesome performances this season. Herbert looked great. Eckler, number 1. I don't think that changed with the Monday night games.
I think Taylor was 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Eckler looked great. Mike Williams had another awesome day. Other than that week 4 where he just did nothing, he's been super solid. Like for a guy that was the 50th ranked wide receiver to be number 2. We've talked a lot about biggest surprises, and his name doesn't pop up. But I mean, you have to be ecstatic if he landed with him on your team.
I mean, yeah. I mean, even in his bad week in week 4, there was a miss that could have been a huge play, and his week just skyrockets. It wasn't obviously week 4. There's no way you wouldn't have played him in week 5. He has been so good. Keenan Allen, definitely a little disappointing. He's just been the first 3 weeks. He was kind of where you drafted him. And I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. You drafted him like a little. He's a little off, but he's a little below. But you're like, yeah, he'll be fine. He just wasn't getting the touchdowns. A little bit more nervous now just because it's just the Mike Williams show. But with that said, the fact that Mike Williams, 16 targets, Keenan Allen 9 targets. If you're getting 9 to 12 targets in a Justin Herbert led offense, I still think Keenan Allen is still borderline will be a top 10 wide receiver the rest of the season. Currently wide receiver 20. I still think he's.
I think he might be closer to 15.
If you redrafted, he wouldn't be wide receiver 9, but I think he would be, close to 15. I think he would be around 15. I personally think he would be around 10 to 12. But I'd have to look at all the guys. But yeah, outside of that, Jared Cook wasn't involved at all. Yeah, Eckler is a stud. He's the guy. Mike Williams is a stud. Keenan Allen, if you draft him, you got to play him. Even though this week wasn't the best, 6 for 75. It's not like you're disappointed in that. It's just he's got to get in the end zone to really, step up. And Mike Williams just taking all the love. He's been incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, we have Baltimore. Lamar Jackson has another awesome week. Third quarterback on the year, is a stud. Hollywood Brown, another one of those drafted in the 50s in wide receivers. He's a top 10 guy. That is helped by two very high weeks. But even his bad week is slight, like right where you drafted him. So even on his bad week, you got what you thought out of him. So he's been awesome. Andrews is one of those no doubt tight ends. The running back situation is now about as toxic as it gets. Like, both guys are going to be owned in every league, and nobody's going to be happy about playing either one of them.
Yeah, this is tough. I remember somebody actually left a comment about either Latavius Murray or Kenneth Gainwell on the channel a few days ago, and I said I'd probably rock Latavius Murray because I'm more confident in his workload. Like something like he just has the floor is much higher. Gainwell just doesn't see enough, and I don't know if I was right or wrong because I think both were terrible. But yeah, I mean, Murray got 50% of the snaps, so unless you're really desperate, it's just he's not doing. He only had 6 carries. He just what he's supposed to do with that. Had 2 catches as well with Tyson Williams. I have no idea. Honestly, I don't feel good about it. This is just a mess there. With that said, Lamar Jackson, incredible. Top 3, top 5 quarterback rest of the season. He's just insane. Mark Andrews, hello, you're incredible. Hollywood Brown, I've actually been higher. I'm like, I have no idea why he's not ranked in the top 20, because how can you be 17-7? I know week 3 wasn't great, but then 13 in week 4, and now he was number 3. How can you consistently be a top that good and not be like, okay, this is legit?
Oh.
And his 1 week he wasn't good. That was the game that he had all those drops, so he could have been way up the board as well. So he's just been so pivotal to this offense. Really high on Hollywood Brown. Yeah, and that's about it when you look at the offense. But yeah, if you would drafted Hollywood Brown late, put him in and just don't even think twice about it. He's been incredible.
I hope there's somebody out there who drafted Hollywood Brown and Mike Williams. Like they got both of them,
which they could
like,
very easily, because they were
very easily,
and they could add like Cooper Kupp too, because they he was like, or they could even have like Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, Mike Williams, and Hollywood Brown, because
like I want to see that. We got Arizona next. Kyler didn't have his best day, and watching this game didn't look fantastic, but he's still like, he's not a guy you're super worried about. Just an off day. Hopkins, honestly, watching Hopkins saved him on a couple of those where like it could have looked even worse, but Hopkins made some very nice catches.
That touchdown grab was great. He's still drafted him as wide receiver 4. Even with that, he's still only wide receiver 13 for the week. If you were redrafting the rest of the year, he's borderline top 10. He's probably 10, not 8, 9, 10, somewhere there, but he's definitely been not great. But thankfully, that touchdown at the end, which he just on Josh Norman, it was a great play. The ball skills on DeAndre Hopkins are incredible. And this defense for the 49ers is really, really good. So I think this is kind of a throwaway game for Kyler. They've got the win, so I mean, that's big for them. But I don't know. DeAndre Hopkins, still, you're starting him every week. Edmonds, Connor, Edmonds had this is kind of ugly. They're both, Edmonds is still the guy, I think, but it's because Edmonds is more involved in the passing game. Connor is obviously the goal line guy though, so, and he's still getting 40 to 50% of the snaps. It is, to me, they were even on they were on the field some snaps too, both of them. So I don't know, with Edmonds, he's still like probably 20, 25 ranked. Connor's a little bit lower, like 5 spot. I mean, they're very close. You might be starting both of them if you own one.
It's a situation I'm glad I don't have any part of, though. Like, I think they're guys you have to at least think about playing, but it's a situation I'm glad I personally don't have to do anything with. And other than Hopkins on the wide receiver, I don't think there's a guy. I mean, there's guys you're thinking about in Moore and Kirk, but I think they've kind of.
AJ Green did not have a good day, but they continue to. I don't know if it's because of his run blocking or they just like how he can every week he's continued to be on the field. 80% of the time or so. Will that go down eventually when Rondale Moore gets more accumulated with the acclimated with the offense? Maybe, but as of now, we haven't seen any indication that AJ Green is getting off the field. So, and that's not helping AJ Green. He only had 1 catch for 13 yards, but it probably is hurting the other guys. Fantasy-wise, sure. Obviously they're undefeated, so they're doing something right. I'm not gonna say I know better than the Arizona Cardinals. I'm just saying from a fantasy.
They need to start worrying about us. It's about us. They need to know.
Yeah.
For our sake, that they need to figure that out. So, next up, Browns. Baker Mayfield had a nice week. Still, I don't think, for the most part, unless it's a pretty deep league, fantasy relevant. Let's get down to what you really want to talk about with the Cleveland, and that's the running situation. 2 top 10 backs. Continues to just be crazy there with the rushing game. I don't even know what to say at this point.
Remember, I said in a few episodes ago, is it possible that we have, I think it was top 12. I don't know if I said top 10. Top 12, 2 top 12 running backs on the same team. Mm-hmm. And it continues as we currently they are top 12, so they weren't going into this week, but they were close. I mean, it wasn't like I was saying anything crazy, but it continues to be this rushing attack. They can tell you, I'm going to run the ball. They're telling you, like, I'm running it, and there's nothing you can do about it because the offensive line is that good. Cleveland still, with that said, they should not have lost this game, in my opinion. But with that said, he put up 42 points. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt both have huge days. Hunt got 2 touchdowns, which vaulted him a little bit ahead of Chubb, but Chubb got 21 carries did for 161. That
Yeah.
run he had, that 52-yard run, was a thing of beauty. Of Yeah, he's insane. Hunt's been insane. They're both guys. I mean, whether you say top 12, top 15, wherever you put them, you're starting both of them. And
Yeah.
Chubb is about where you drafted him, and I think rest of season he's currently 12. ADP was 10. I think he's actually, even though that's where he's at, I think he might be even above that. Uh, he might be like 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there. And Hunt drafted at 23. Like I said before, he might be 11, 12, 13. He's right there as well. Maybe 15. Still really happy with where
Yeah.
he's at.
Yeah. Both just no brainers. Still don't want any part of the um, receiving game. A couple of okay games, but I'm good. Njoku had a great day, but this is an outlier. Like I still don't see a situation where you don't have a better option.
His snap count was exactly where it's been, so it's just where it comes down to is he got 7 targets. He obviously looked good. Will this mean that he's more involved in the offense? Maybe. He could be worth a flyer. Pick him up if he does it again. If you need a tight end this week, you could be like, okay, for 1 week I'll roll with him, and if he doesn't do anything, you can pick somebody else up. I'm okay with that. If you had to drop your tight end or pick somebody up for a week to see, if he stays involved with 7 targets, because if you get 7 targets from a tight end, that's good. So we'll see if that continues. Again, bye weeks are starting now, so if you want to pick them up, I don't believe it. You don't believe it, but if you want to try it for a week,
There's worse choices you could make. I'll admit that.
Yeah.
Raiders, we are to a team where there's just like 2 relevant guys really. Jacobs, he was 20-ish this week. Still a guy you're running out there as long as he's healthy and on the field. Just not a good day. Did manage a touchdown, which helped. And then wide receiver wise, like I'm not super excited about any of them, but I mean Renfro probably a guy you're at least considering in your flex spot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, another team, which we don't talk about it because they haven't been, all three of them, that runs a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. So you
Yeah.
see
Just
all
less
the top
effectively with a
3
terrible
guys,
quarterback.
Edwards, Ruggs, and Renfro, are on the field 75% of the time, each of them or more. Uh, I do think Renfro, again, that's what, 3 straight weeks where this week he was 33, so I'm kind of picking that number arbitrarily, but he's top 33 the last 3 weeks. So, again, that's kind of interesting. A flex play, I think he's right there. Again, if he's getting 8 targets, not a great day by Derek Carr, brother of Texan great David Carr, but not a great day. Josh Jacobs, this offense, they put up 9 points. So,
No, yeah, it was bad. That's the thing with Waller. Waller was 14, which is obviously outside of where you expect him to be. But the fact that he even got a 14, or it would probably drop to 15 performance out of this game kind of tells you where he is talent wise, because
yeah,
even that's pretty high compared to everybody else on the field.
And we see a Willie Snead sighting. 1 catch for 3 yards. Willie Snead the fourth. Remember him when he was on the Saints. Big Willie Snead fans here in the Butler household. So nice to see him out there.
All right. Broncos. Bridgewater had a top 13 day. Not really super relevant. I would hope you don't have to make that decision. Running back situation continues to be mildly muddy in a way that's just not fun. Sutton had a great day. Ended up top 10-ish wide receiver. There's just not a lot. It's super exciting. Fant had a bad day, but I'm not concerned about that. He's gonna have these every once in a while, but he's still a guy you're starting almost every week unless you've got one of the top guys.
Yeah, we'll see when Jerry Jeudy comes back. Still a few weeks out. He obviously is going to be interesting if he's healthy. He's super talented. Noah Fant's on the field like every snap, so don't worry about him. He is one of those tight ends that just doesn't come off the field, so he'll be more involved in the future, and he has been. If he's been currently tight end 11, but that's 2 bad weeks and 3 really good weeks, so. Not worried about him. Teddy's been fine.
I'll take that ratio.
Teddy's been fine. Cortland Sutton, it's nice to see him because you might be forced to play. Not forced, but you might be more amped to start him now after this week. Now that bye weeks are starting, you're like, okay, Cortland Sutton showed me something. Let's go ahead and put him in. 11 targets, super talented receiver. Tim Patrick had a nice day as well. Played every snap basically. Tim Patrick did. So another guy in a deep league, I think. Well, he 100% should have already been owned in a deep league. But
Oh yeah.
Tim Patrick has been way over what anybody would expect. I really like him, and as a flex play, like a solid play in deeper leagues, and maybe even as a stash in a 12 to 14 team league, depending on what's going on with Jerry Jeudy. But Sutton, yeah, I think he is interesting because I think you probably are starting him in a lot of leagues because he showed you something, and bye weeks are here. But Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, complete timeshare basically. So not much to say there. And if
Williams appears to be the guy you'd rather have, but it's not a great situation.
I mean, he's the rookie, and maybe they'll go with him. But yeah, this wasn't. They put up 19 points. Neither one of them had a touchdown, so not much to say there.
Yeah. Cowboys pretty cut and dry over there. Prescott, another top 10 week. You're pretty much every league he's starting. Elliott, top 10 week, awesome. Lamb looked good. Cooper looked decent. I mean, they're both top 25. Of Lamb closer to 15. You're starting those guys. Pollard had kind of came back to a little bit better position than he had a couple of 40-ish weeks. Got back up to that kind of 25-inch range, so has a little bit of value there. And Schultz, your guy,
continues to be pretty solid. So yeah, pretty happy with that. If you got Schultz, if you were able to pick him up, like awesome. You're rolling with him for a while here. Yeah, Elliott, right where you drafted him, he's great. Dak, he's fine. About maybe a little lower than if you redrafted, you might draft him a little bit lower than what he was drafted at, but he's fine. Cooper and Lamb have been disappointment, especially Lamb. A lot of people thought this could be breakout here. He's not been great. But this week he did get that long touchdown.
Disappointing, but still, guys, you're
and when you saw the touchdown, it wasn't much separation. And then when the ball was in the air, and you're like, that was pretty tight coverage, and his speed, and also just an absolutely gorgeous throw by Dak Prescott on that 49-yard touchdown. So still really like his talent. Another guy who you're redrafting, you probably go lower than where he was drafted, but still, if you have him, you're rolling him out there. So not much else there. Schultz, obviously, I've mentioned. Cool, you got a tight end. You were not expecting that, so you got now a tight end one, which is good to see.
No. Patriots, I think we've said this before. A team full of guys that you really don't want on your fantasy team unless you have to. I don't know what else to say. Like, there's just not guys you're excited to have. If you have Harris, you're probably thinking about him, but you're hoping you have a better option. Myers is kind of in that same ballpark still. I picked up Hunter Henry this week because I'm in a bad spot in a couple of tight end leagues. That's what happens when you believe in Robert Tonyan. But other than that, do you got any? I have nothing.
I will say Hunter Henry is, I think, a nice ad right now. I mean, he's been playing. Yeah.
He had a nice game, and
he's been the tight end of choice. We weren't sure they were both around the same, for a while, like not sure which one you want, and now it seems like it's clearly Hunter Henry. I will say Damian Harris with that fumble. Generally, you're out for the game. It was a great play by the Texans. Terrible play by him to fumble there, but generally, the following week you're back in. Belichick doesn't like you fumble and you get pulled for the game. But I think, I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I do think he does a lot of times go back to him. But with that said, if he does, if he stays, he did leave this game for shortly as well with a rib injury. If he's injured or banged up at all, Ramondre Stevenson is a name to look out for. A rookie out of Oklahoma, 4th-round pick. Somebody that saw a good amount of snaps in this game, actually right there with Bolden and Harris. They were all around the same, which means you don't like it because they're all around the same amount of snaps. But he got 11 carries. So when he was in there, they were giving the ball. He had a touchdown called back. I know his carry average doesn't look great, but somebody just to look out for. Probably an ad in deeper leagues for sure. But if you're able to pick him up, or if you have a spot available, or if you're on a high waiver spot and you're able to pick him up after this week, wait and see what he does. A name just to look out for that I'm kind of interested in.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, Seahawks, a team that got way less interesting after this week. Russell out a handful of weeks at least. Like I don't think I've seen an official number yet. Um, so Geno Smith time, which is not good for anybody. Um, Carson didn't play. Lockett had, after just starting out looking like the greatest wide receiver that ever played football, 3 straight weeks where he just didn't do much. I guess like not like the worst day in the world this week, but also not a day you're very happy with, and a guy who has went from a stud to a guy where you're trying to make a decision on whether he's in your lineup, and especially with Geno Smith at quarterback, I think that decision tends to lean the opposite way.
I probably disagree with that because I think that Gino at least showed me. I mean, he was all right in this game. Obviously, DK Metcalf was the recipient of those touchdowns, which really helped.
Yeah.
But he had 10 targets with Lockett. I know 5 for 57 is not what you're looking for, but I still think there is a pretty good chance you're starting him. Obviously, with those first couple weeks, you're like, man, I just got maybe the best wide receiver in football for fantasy. Which he was right there with Cooper Cup. Cooper Cup
Oh
was the
yeah.
guy, but I think Lockett was too. So it's like they were both up there, and obviously he's regressed a lot. But with that said, 10 targets. If he's able to, we'll see. I think there's a good chance you do have to roll with him in this week, and we'll just have to wait and see how it goes in this game. If there's something that you see that we don't like, then obviously you might pull him out and just decide to go with someone else. But I don't know. It's hard to imagine you have a better receiver or flex play than Tyler Lockett going in your lineup that you would plug in, unless you're just worried. I'm personally not as worried with Geno
No.
Smith, just because I saw him play against the Rams and I thought he looked solid against the Rams, and they're a pretty good team. So I'm saying it will be okay. Obviously
Yeah.
not Russell
I
though.
mean, yeah, for sure. And running back wise, until Carson's back, you're not touching this situation.
Well, I
It would
mean, you
appear.
might. I mean, he's starting running back. I feel like Alex Collins. Like if you,
Really? You want Alex Collins. Like
uh,
not want, but
I
I
think
don't see a situation. I feel like there's way better options out there.
I think there's a. I mean, not on the waiver wire. I don't think so. I mean, it depend. I mean, you might have
That
had one on your lineup, but like a lot of teams are struggling with running backs. So if you get a starting running back in the NFL, I think he's a right in there. He's probably in the 20s somewhere ranked. So I think there's a good chance you would
oh,
start him.
that seems I don't know. I hope because I care about everybody. None of you are in that situation. Let's say that. Um. All right. Couple teams left. Steelers. Um. Roethlisberger looked half decent this week, so that was good. Um. Harris continues to be Najee Harris continues to be just a stud. And after that, Juju went down, which we talked about yesterday. Juju went down, which helps a little bit. Johnson and Claypool both had decent days. Um, not like amazing, but decent. Claypool was top 10-ish. So I think both of them get a little bit of a boost. We talked about not sure that they could handle 3 wide receivers. They weren't doing a great job of it, but now they don't have to. So I think both those guys get some boost in production.
Yeah, I'm really high on both of them. I really like Johnson. I like Claypool. Najee Harris has been fantastic. Really, just overall, I think this offense, obviously losing Juju is not good for Pittsburgh, but for fantasy purposes, yeah, Claypool, Johnson, Harris is. I mean, can't. I mean, he's been amazing. There's not much change in there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think the third wide receiver, if you're interested, is Ray McLeod. Um, I mean, again, he had 2 targets, 1 catch for 1 yard. He was on the field a lot when Juju went down. So that would be the name that you'll see. You'll see him on the field. Not saying you should
But
play him, not saying you should pick him up, even in deep leagues, but just that guy that will be out there.
no, absolutely. Uh, Bills. Last game, Bills Titans. Um, Josh Allen had another great day. Uh, Moss looked good. 25 is not great, but a nice solid day out of him. A guy we've talked about a decent amount, and like Sanders had another nice day. A guy we've talked about and I've been pretty high on. So good to see. you want to talk about tight end? Because I don't want to. It makes me sad.
I mean, if it makes you feel, it was only 3 catches. I mean, 117 yards to make him tight end 3. It wasn't Mark Andrews, but yeah, Dawson Knox continues to be another guy like in the not quite Dalton Schultz level, but I think because he had the first couple weeks that were much better than Schultz, but yeah, you didn't draft him, so and you see after the first couple of weeks, you might have picked him up, being like, okay, this is kind of interesting. And then he produced in week 3, and then he really produced in week 4, and now he really produces in week 5. Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who I don't think he's a top 5 tight end, but I think he's probably top 7, top 8, he's somewhere in there. Yeah, 3 for 117. Not great, but when you get not great for only 3 catches. I mean, if you get 3 catches, you're not expecting 117 yards. But yeah, and the touchdown, Josh Allen, incredible. Yeah, he's amazing. Just not a he only passed only had 15 completions, so there's
Couple of very long ones though. That Knox one was 53. The Diggs had a 61. Sanders had a 35. Like those 3 catches alone will jack up your
complete
passing
blowout
stats, so.
here, no doubt about that. And Zach Moss is clearly the guy at running back.
Oh yeah,
So
no question.
We see Zach Moss continue to look solid, and now this wasn't even close. Zach Moss was clearly the guy. For the first week, we see a complete just 3-1. It's not even close, snap count wise.
Yep. All right. Last but not least, the Titans. Tannehill kind of continues to disappoint. He was on that fringe of like you could have drafted him as a starter if you really waited on quarterback. Has not proven to be that this season. So hopefully you were able to grab one of the surprise guys if you were in that situation. Henry's a stud. I don't think we're too concerned on that front. Where we are concerned is wide receiver. It is not going well for these wide receivers. AJ Brown was a top 10 guy. He's currently number 80 on a points per game basis, 57 last week. Just almost like, and he's going to need to put together like 2 games before I think a lot of people are willing to start him again. Julio didn't travel, or Julio didn't play. He hasn't been great when he did. Honestly, he had 1 decent week, but other than that, it's other than Henry, there's not a whole lot on this team you're excited about. A couple guys you're rostering, but maybe not starting. Probably not starting.
Yeah, Tannehill. It wasn't like he had a bad real game. Like he had
No.
like it was fine. He was solid. This was a blowout. I thought it actually could be competitive, but it was a blowout for much of the game. Easily taking care of Jacksonville. Yeah, I mean, again, it wasn't like he was bad, but he only had 14 completions, 200 yards, and a touchdown. Like, you're just not going to have much fantasy value there. 3 rushes for 21 yards as well. Derrick Henry, this is I think a lot to do with how good Derrick Henry is as well. I mean,
yeah,
he's been incredible. Clearly,
if it works, just keep handing
clearly
it to him.
running back 1 rest of season, in my opinion. McCaffrey would be the argument, but because of health, you would have to go Henry. I think McCaffrey being 2 for me, but yeah, the receiver core has just been terrible. It's hard. Part of it is probably because of Tannehill and just not having to throw, not having to put up the fan. It's all Derrick Henry, and also like what's going on. I mean, is there with AJ Brown? I mean, he had 6 targets, 3 for 38, just hasn't been good. He drafted him as wide receiver 8. Like that's the thing too. Like this one stings so much more because
it hurts.
It was your number 1 receiver probably, and he has been awful. If you drafted Ryan Tannehill, you could have gotten Jalen Hurts at the right, after him. That's pretty painful. Like there's just so many players that you just don't know. And this was, I mean, I think everybody's surprised. If you say what's the biggest surprise of the year, I think one of them would be AJ Brown.
Yeah.
And we'll see if they're able to write it. He's still super talented. I wouldn't be surprised if he, has several weeks in the top 10. But right now, how do you trust that to happen?
Last thing is, he's a guy who's got so much talent, you can't drop him. But at the same time, he's going to have to put together 2 weeks before you can start him. So it's not a great spot to be in. But hopefully turns around.
I'm looking at the rankings. They have him at wide receiver 22 this upcoming week. Like, would you play him over Claypool.
That's
I would rather play Claypool. Adam
oh
Thielen.
yeah,
As bad as Adam
yes.
Thielen, I would Hollywood Brown, wide receiver 25. That seems ridiculous. I'd rather play Hollywood Brown. Devontae Smith at 26. Brandon Cooks at 27. Pure upside, I'm probably around that point, but still, there's a good chance you have a lot of these guys. Like Jamar Chase, you could have gotten much later. You obviously he's a top 10 guy right now, but he's a clear one. But Cortland Sutton, I'd rather play him over AJ Brown. So Antonio Brown, a guy I would definitely play over AJ Brown. So there's plenty of guys you could have picked up that you would play over him, and that's just wide receivers. It might be a running back as well, a Cordell Patterson or somebody that you would definitely play over him. So that you would have picked up later. I think 22 is really high though for how he's been playing.
That's crazy.
I don't buy it, but again, this is not our rankings, so that's the beauty of taking other people's rankings, because you can't attack us if we say like, well, look at this. Well, you can if you look at somebody else's and say like, yeah, this isn't ours, this is somebody else's work. So I like that part.
Passing the blame. So that wraps up our first shorter week, which is nice. We tried the shorter NFL week. We tried the kind of split the week in two on videos. It seemed weird to do that. Make you come back if there was like a game you're really into. We'd prefer if you watched all of them. We try our best to make them entertaining. We hope you enjoy them, but we think this new format's going to work a little bit better with all the games, especially with them being cut down by a couple games. I think it's doable in a video. So we appreciate you making it this far. Thank you very much. If you made it this far, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Helps us out a lot. Leave us a comment. Cards on the table. Butler's very good about keeping up with the comments. Me, not so much. So he does, and we appreciate all the interaction. We appreciate you guys coming through.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you hit everything, so make sure to come back. We'll have some different videos throughout the rest of the week. Thursday, Friday, Saturday will be more random, like sort of just interesting ideas, interesting videos that we find. So just a heads up there. Make sure to come back, subscribe like you said. Thank you so much. That's all we got. See ya.
Yep.